Wake the up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Man, 2019 sure seems like a long time ago now, right? Hey everyone, I'm Kane, and on occasion I play games, and what you're seeing on screen right now is the exact moment that I decided to buy Cyberpunk 2077. Well, that's not exactly true. As a fan of RPGs in both the cyberpunk aesthetic and genre, I was fairly confident I was picking up this game come its then April 2020 launch. What you're seeing on screen is the moment that convinced me to actually place my pre-order and purchase the game. After this, I would keep a close eye on the game and watch it transform from a product that would define a generation of gaming to a shining example of both the industry's failures and its shortcomings. This is Cyberpunk 2077, and here's how it all went wrong. The thing about Cyberpunk is that it was a game that couldn't fail, but was set up to do exactly that. That setup, publicly at least, started right here with a small moment that would set the internet on fire.
Okay, but let me tell you, the feeling of being there, of walking the streets of the future, is really going to be breathtaking. You're breathtaking. You're breathtaking. You're all breathtaking. All right. So, I guess I gotta finish this, so tell me.
This one small, on-the-beat interruption by Xbox-focused content creator Peter Sark would be immortalized in gaming history, and with it came a marketer's euphoria. Just like that, Cyberpunk 2077 had surpassed traditional video game discourse and had ascended into meme culture. Memes have become a major part of our day-to-day life in the social media age, and with that fact comes the hunger of corporations to use them as marketing material to benefit their business. Sometimes this can work. KFC's foray into gaming memedom has been a pretty big success, for example. Most of the time, however, it doesn't, and that's for the simple reason that nobody likes it when a business tries too hard to be relatable or cool. That's what's so perfect about You're Breathtaking. It's real. It's a genuine moment that transformed what would otherwise be just an exciting celebrity plug for a video game into a moment that was unforgettable and, more importantly, something that people would talk about and share online. This one small exchange at Xbox's 2019 E3 conference was better marketing than CD Projekt Red could have ever dreamed of getting. Knowing what we know now, however, that's exactly the problem. People on the internet, especially gamers such as myself, well, we're a fickle bunch at the best of times, but more importantly than that, we don't forget. So when we're all witnessing something incredibly big and it doesn't live up to that standard or doesn't keep to that standard consistently, well, that positive source of memes can quickly sour, and all of a sudden you're at the center of meme culture again, but for all the wrong reasons, and Cyberpunk had a lot of reasons. Let's begin with the delays. Cyberpunk 2077 was a game originally announced all the way back in the far distant past of 2012. To put this into perspective, Cyberpunk 2077 was announced before even The Witcher 3 was, a game that was released a full 5 years before Cyberpunk eventually would be. This was followed by a very cool trailer in 2013 and interviews by CD Projekt Red studio head Adam Badowski. While talking to Eurogamer, Badowski promised multiplayer components which, as of writing, we have still yet to see and don't even know if they're coming or not anymore. CD Projekt Red did announce that the multiplayer aspects of Cyberpunk 2077 would be a post-launch project, but they have since cancelled that as of March 2021. However, more recent updates to the game have teased it once again via in-game files, so who even knows at this point, quite frankly. The first official release date, though, takes us back to 2019 and Keanu, who awkwardly fumbled his way through a tease before pointing at the screen to reveal the date of April 16th, 2020. This wasn't meant to be, though, as CD Projekt Red would publicly announce the game had been delayed on January 16th, 2020, just 3 months before its scheduled release. This first delay marks a very crucial point in the downfall of Cyberpunk, as not only did it provide us with our first insight into the development troubles that the game was having, it also provided us with our first negative meme regarding the game: the yellowing. Cyberpunk's method of delivering delays is now infamous online, with that bright yellow background being duplicated and laughed at by countless people on social media. It became such a thing that other game companies began posting their own yellow background images just to poke fun at the situation. In fact, and I kid you not, I've seen people make jokes about this and make meme requests for statements made by game companies to be put on yellow backgrounds as of November 2021, almost 2 years removed from the original one of these delay posts, and yes, I did say original. This delay moved the goalposts from April to the new date of September 17th, 2020, but that was also not meant to be. Despite the January announcement claiming that the game was complete and playable, June 18th, 2020 saw another dreaded yellow background appear on our Twitter timelines, announcing that the game was being pushed back even further to November 19th, 2020. This second statement saw CD Projekt Red reiterate their stance of ready when it's ready and apologise for the delays. They did, however, also promise that the game was both complete in content and gameplay, but the extra time was needed to make sure that everything worked perfectly, which, as I'm sure you're well aware of if you're watching this video, went really well. Truth be told, this delay made a lot of sense. The coronavirus pandemic had shaken the world at this point, with many companies enacting their own lockdowns and remote working practices to ensure the safety of their employees where possible. Cyberpunk wasn't the only victims of delays either, as the ripples of COVID's effects on the world are still being felt, with many a game being forced to move its release date. Cyberpunk just had the misfortune of being the largest, and now it was a repeat offender. This led to the first real wave of skepticism and distrust in Cyberpunk, with memes of its title being an omen of its actual release date popping up from time to time, alongside a lot of gamers who were legitimately angry that they weren't getting the game that they wanted, when they wanted it. As for myself, I was disappointed with the delays for sure, but honestly it was a blessing in disguise for me personally. It allowed me time to upgrade my gaming PC and hopefully enjoy the game at what I hoped would be its max potential. Yeah, that didn't happen. I was still a believer in Cyberpunk 2077 because I wanted to be one. I didn't see the red flags. That would change soon after though. September 29th, 2020 would finally bring the red flags of Cyberpunk's development to the forefront of the conversation. A Bloomberg report made by Jason Schreier revealed that 6-day work weeks had now been mandated at CD Projekt Red, directly opposing the studio's promise to stop crunch culture after the reported development hell that was The Witcher 3. Crunch, for those who perhaps are unaware, refers to the culture at many game studios around the world where employees are either forced or pressured into working incredibly long hours, sometimes for little to no extra payment. It's a very serious problem within the industry, and unfortunately it's one that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere anytime soon, despite the best efforts of reporters like Schreier to expose these sometimes inhumane working conditions. Studio head Adam Badowski acknowledged this failure to live up to that promise in an email, stating that he knew this was in direct opposition to what CD Projekt Red have said about crunch, but that the studio had extended all other means of navigating the situation. Despite this, however, an anonymous employee did claim that some staff members had already been working nights and weekends for over a year already by this point. It was this report that really changed my perspective when it came to Cyberpunk. CD Projekt Red's refusal to stick to their promise and resort back to crunch culture after the hell that was The Witcher 3 really rubbed me the wrong way, personally speaking, but as much as I was seeing the red flags, I did still want to believe deep down. Then came a weird moment in the timeline of Cyberpunk 2077, as on October 5th, 2020, the game had announced that it had gone gold, meaning that it was finished, ready to be published and manufactured for release. Just like that, gamers had gotten a thumbs up from the official source that Cyberpunk 2077 was finally ready and was finally going to be played by so many of us, and people celebrated the upcoming November 19th release, until they changed it. Again, despite the studio publicly announcing that the game was done and ready to be shipped, October 27th saw one final delay from November 19th to December 10th, 2020. While many of us were still eager and okay with waiting that little bit of extra time, a lot of us weren't. I still remember having countless discussions, debates, and even arguments with friends and peers of mine over whether or not any of these delays were even valid and whether or not CD Projekt Red should just release the game already. As we approached launch day, people were still unsure on whether or not we were actually going to see Cyberpunk anytime soon. Then, on December 7th, 2020, the reviews landed, and they were actually pretty good. The problem, however, was that they weren't as accurate as they should have been. The review embargo lifted and outlets showered the game with praise. While they mentioned bugs, something common and to be expected among large open world RPGs, the reviews were glowing, but with one small caveat. The reviews were only for PC. CD Projekt Red, aware of the horrendous difference between its PC and console versions, simply neglected to distribute review keys for its subpar ports, a deliberate ploy to keep the image of the game looking good and to maximize sales, and while that does make sense why they would do that, at best, it's misleading. Games media has a bad reputation, one that is, more often than not, undeserved. A lot of this bad blood stems from reviews and writers giving a score based on their personal consensus of a game that doesn't quite match up with what groups of people think. This topic and my own personal stance on reviews as a person who makes them is a video in its own right, but this level of distrust has led to some wild speculation and conspiracies from people who think that reviewers and gaming outlets are paid for good scores, which, spoiler alert, they're not. So what do you think is going to happen when a large majority of gamers see these gleaming review scores for one of the most anticipated games of all time, don't realize that the review isn't representative of their personal system because who genuinely has the time to think that, and then buy a console version of the game only to be greeted by this? What do you think is going to happen? It was a nightmare. The real nightmare though, that was the backlash CD Projekt Red was getting. Cyberpunk 2077's release gathered a lot of negativity for the company, with its stock prices dropping a whopping 29% in the lead up to the game, with a further drop of 7.8% when it actually launched. Just to demonstrate how disastrously bad this is, Activision Blizzard's stock prices only reportedly dropped a mere 6.1% after the damning Wall Street Journal report on Bobby Kotick, a report which claimed that the CEO had allegedly been fully aware of the many sexual misconduct allegations at the company for years. The stocks of CD Projekt Red took a massive hit for sure, but that was not the end of their problems, as what would come next is perhaps the craziest moment in gaming history that I've ever personally witnessed. It was insane. CD Projekt Red released a transcript of one of their conference calls on December 15th, 2020. I've linked the entire transcript below for those interested in reading, but there are two major talking points I want to mention. The first is that CD Projekt Red fully admitted that they did not spend as much time as they needed to on past-gen consoles, meaning that they were fully aware of the problems that they had. The second point to bring up is regarding the refunds and refund policies of both Xbox and PlayStation. In this conference call, CD Projekt Red were repeatedly asked about their decision to highlight the possibility of refunds and why they were encouraging them. While they denied encouraging them, stating that they hoped people would just give them a chance, the problem arose when discussing both Xbox and PlayStation's refund policies, in particular claiming that both had policies that allowed players to get refunds, which, in the case of Sony, wasn't entirely true. PlayStation didn't have a formalized return process. This, combined with the slight implication that Microsoft and Sony published a game that was triggering seizures without giving it full certification, led to one of the most insane moments I've ever seen. Just 3 days after this conference call on the 18th of December, a little over a week after its launch date, PlayStation made the decision to remove Cyberpunk 2077 from its digital storefront. A completely unprecedented move, but one that accurately painted the severity of Cyberpunk's failures, despite its commercial success via pre-orders. Nobody knew whether Cyberpunk would even return to the platform at the time, with Sony Interactive Entertainment stating that SIE strives to ensure a high level of customer satisfaction, therefore we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via the PlayStation Store. Later that same day, Xbox would publicly announce that it was offering full refunds for the title as well. This removal saw stock prices plummet by another 15%. Cyberpunk has since returned to the PlayStation Store, being fully re-released on June 21st, 2021, half a year after its launch. PlayStation now actively recommends people play on either a PS4 Pro or PS5 and not a base console. That decision transformed what was a disappointment into a disaster, but it didn't end there either. Furious at the misleading launch and removal from PlayStation stores, a minimum of 4 class action lawsuits were filed against the studio, which later consolidated into one. 2 of these were from investors, who claimed that CD Projekt Red had been misleading them over the quality of Cyberpunk 2077, failing to disclose that the title was virtually unplayable on the current generation of Xbox or PlayStation systems due to an enormous amount of bugs, thus causing them to incur damages. Hey, I'm currently editing this video, and during the editing process, so after I recorded everything, it actually came out and said that these court cases are now in the settlement phase, apparently. I left the source for that information down below, but I wanted to make sure that I was giving you the most up-to-date and accurate representation of Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red situation. So yeah, check all the sources down below if you want to read more about that. Thank you. Let's get on with it. Since then, Cyberpunk 2077 has faded away into the background. It had a brief stint at the center of gaming memedom for all the wrong reasons again, but we all eventually just moved on to the next big thing. Since then, Cyberpunk's just updated itself throughout the year to try and fix some of the major errors that it had. Its next-gen release has been delayed to Q1 2022 as of writing, and its expansion plans have also been delayed, and as I mentioned earlier, we don't even know if multiplayer is happening anymore. But CD Projekt Red have been adamant in turning Cyberpunk into a sort of redemption story, in the vein of No Man's Sky, for example. Has it achieved that so far? Well, let's find out together as I look at Cyberpunk 2077 1 year later. The short answer to that question is not yet. I'm playing the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077 for this video like I did in my initial review, and that's important to note as the PC version has always been considerably better than its console counterparts, actually being playable at launch despite its glaring issues when it came to bugs. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The game runs a lot better than it did at launch. That's not to say it's bug-free though, as that's definitely not the case, it's just that the severity of the bugs remaining are considerably less. I've still seen plenty in my time playing, but outside of one crash that I think I caused, and one insane bug that basically crashed the game, the amount of bugs that either crashed or required a restart to fix are down big time. The ones remaining are mostly small graphical glitches with texture clipping or lighting not quite working the way it should. Some physics are still a little off too, and the occasional NPC freakout will still happen, but it's overall an improvement and a step in the right direction. The main source of bugs and problems I've found from this latest playthrough are vehicles. The controls on all the cars are still way too floaty, with the bikes being the best way to travel around Night City and beyond. That being said, I often found that all the vehicles would easily get stuck on geometry, clipping through each other and causing the physics to bug out. It's still far less common to see these issues compared to when I first played the game, but they are still a major weak point for the title overall, and something that hopefully gets a tune-up come future updates. Speaking of future updates, I hope that these also bring more gameplay improvements and expansions, as the biggest issue I had with Cyberpunk still remains to be true. It's a game that feels like it had elements of its gameplay taken away from it, mostly because it did. This creates a weird thematic contradiction. Cyberpunk is a game with its roots in a world that has massive themes of excess in all aspects of life, but the game feels barren and stripped back. It just doesn't quite add up and is sort of jarring to the experience overall. While there are more overt cases out there of it feeling stripped back, such as wall climbing with mantis blades and a gun customization system, this feeling creeps into all aspects of Cyberpunk. Even simple things like these customization options feel lacking, despite their relative expansiveness compared to other titles. A perfect example of where Cyberpunk has this weird sense of limitation to it is its uses of cyberware. Cyberware in the tabletop role-playing game, Cyberpunk, is insane. It has a variety of options, many of which don't actually do anything. They're just there for cosmetic purposes to make your character feel more your own. But these aren't in the game. I can't give V synthetic skin, I can't give V a subdermal watch, which is just a watch beneath your skin, or a glowing tattoo for that matter, or hell, I can't even give V a cyber limb, which is one of the more prominent cyberwares featured in the entire Cyberpunk IP. I don't expect or think that Cyberpunk 2077 should be as open-ended as the tabletop role-playing game. That would be impossible to do in a video game. It does, however, seem jarring to have these very prominent and unusual restrictions on a world that is defined by its inherent lack of them. I should point out that I really do enjoy the gameplay altering cyberware, and I've had a lot of fun of using it in my most recent playthrough for this video, the gorilla arms especially. The options there make for interesting twists in playstyle, and is something that I regret not exploring even more for my initial review. I think that the options there will likely keep me playing and making new characters in this game. I'm just sad that all of these NPCs get to have these super customized looks befitting their personalities and lives, while we're just V, potentially with a few wires on our face, and that's about it cosmetically speaking. I've said a lot of critical things here today, and whilst I definitely think those are well-warranted criticisms of the game's design, I do think that you should probably still give it a shot. It's a perfectly enjoyable game if you're interested in playing it, and it's only getting better with each passing update from what I've noticed, and hopefully will redeem itself if the level of progress that we're seeing continues as it does. The primary reason for that, though, comes down to where Cyberpunk 2077 initially shined at its launch, and still shines to this day. Its story, its world, and its quests. If you are a fan of narrative in video games such as myself, Cyberpunk 2077 provides an experience that is like few others, exploring very real themes that have a level of poignancy and impact that only games of the highest caliber can provide, expertly weaving them in with the more typical and sometimes comedic plots that many a gamer would be accustomed to. One of Cyberpunk 2077's biggest praises is that it's created a world that is, for my money, virtually unmatched, especially when it comes to open world games. Despite its often over-the-top and crazy themes provided via the setting, Cyberpunk balances them out with moments that feel real and relatable, dictated beautifully through its storytelling and quest design. It's also refreshing to play an open world RPG where the world itself is an enjoyable aspect of the process, and not just a vehicle for the player moving from quest to quest after a while. Every street in Night City feels alive, in part due to the incredible design work put into each of its major districts, but also the sheer amount of stuff there is to do. Gigs for fixers, side quests, and just random street crimes lit on a map, and it makes exploring Night City truly exciting, as each of these will usually come with some kind of lore or interesting conversation if a friendly NPC is involved. The best missions, however, are when it's nothing but conversation with NPCs. Just spend time with characters that mean something to V, or even Johnny Silverhand, and these are, by far, some of the best quests I've ever played in any video game. It's a testament to how well written the characters are that despite all the wacky stories or intricate gigs and side jobs, that the only quests I've genuinely remembered and thought of in the year since this game came out are the ones where I don't do anything all that special. Spending the day with a friend at a barbecue with their family, visiting a friend's hometown and helping them heal emotionally from their past, attending a funeral. These are all things that are relatively normal at their core, but are experiences that are unforgettable in game. Why? Because these experiences, much like those in real life, are less defined by their content, but by the company you share them with. If you are watching this video and haven't decided whether or not to play Cyberpunk yet, and I admittedly don't blame you if that's the case, I'd recommend trying it out just on the back of these quests alone. The rest of them also warrant their own recommendation in my opinion, as a big fan of lore and world building, but these specific types of quests are just so good that they are the real reason I'd recommend this to people still. Overall, Cyberpunk 2077 is an interesting game. Its journey has been one of conflict, mostly due to the mishandling of the title by CD Projekt Red management. Conflict with fan expectations, conflict with the industry's biggest names, conflict with their own employees and the promises they made and subsequently broken. It's a game that shouldn't be given awards due to business practices that should never be rewarded, and yet at its core is still a product that remains perfectly enjoyable and more satisfying an experience than anyone truly gives it credit for. The game is flawed, even a year on, and pretending otherwise is foolish. But it's getting better, and that's down to the hard-working people at CD Projekt Red who have dedicated years of their lives trying to make something special only for it to be pushed out before it was truly ready. The game's many problems still remained, though lessened, but Cyberpunk's high points are unbelievably high, making for an experience that is, well, breathtaking. Take care. Thank you all for watching this video. It took me absolutely ages to make this. I didn't even record an outro. I'm recording this after I finished editing it. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it around. It would genuinely mean the world to me. I'm very proud of how this came out. I put so much work into it. And I'll see you all soon.